see you too. I am so excited today because you have a phenomenal setup at the moment. I don't know who's available to join us live. If you're here, please say hi. We won't be able to get to see everybody from LinkedIn either because the count is not always there, but do say hi. So George and I met, I would say, almost 5 years ago. And is that right,
Yeah.
George?
Maybe like, yeah, five and a half. Yeah, about 5-ish years ago. Yeah, that sounds
Yeah,
right.
2016. I know time really flies. I remember.
Yeah.
So basically, a little bit about your background. I went to Harvard. I live in Boston. For those of you who are unclear about that. So you were introduced to me through Alexander Buono International. Thank you, Barry and Cosmo. And I was able to go to Harvard and then go to your, what do you call that? Like a practice hall or like a recital room or something?
Yeah, it was like a little salon uh room. Yeah.
Yeah, you were. I remember you picked up the keys and then you took me into this room where you practice. It was such a meditative experience, something that I never took for granted. And remember going to see you perform. You were at the time a classical musician, and then since then, real quick, the 10,000 foot view is that at one point, you were a working musician. At one point, you moved back to California where you grew up and we met up again 3 years ago during my documentary shoot.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, right. Venice Beach. It was so cool. And you were working on robotics. So you were an entrepreneur at the time. And fast forward a few years later, now you found your way back to music. And you even talk about how music is now the only way for you to share your story, where you find your peace, your happiness. So I'm just so glad you're here.
No, thank you for having me. And it's just so amazing as a friend and a fan to watch your podcast grow. Like that's just kind of cool. And like you really were one of the early ones in the podcast world because it didn't really pick. I mean, podcasts were popular, but it's not like the way it is today. I mean, podcasts like I listen to so many podcasts because like, being in LA, you drive a lot.
Mm,
And actually what I used to do was I would play movies on my iPhone. I wouldn't watch them, so don't worry, I'm not breaking any laws, but I would listen to the movies like an audio,
mhm.
like a podcast. But then when podcasts became like a thing and there was a show format and they're incredibly entertaining, and so that was just cool to see your podcast take off. That was super awesome. So yeah, it's amazing what's happened throughout time.
I know it's really is amazing. I mean, to follow your journey to see. I mean, prior to this conversation, I think about all the pivots that you've made today, still as a very young musician, and it's just phenomenal to watch, and it's so fascinating. So I'm so thrilled that most of the people who follow me are creative entrepreneurs, content creators, and I don't see you as anything other than that, right? You create content, you're now on Spotify. You started your own journey on YouTube as well, and I'm just glad we reunited and really talk about our own journey in different ways. How you found your path, and I'm sure that's still evolving and changing. But I mean, you're sitting in front of a beautiful piano right now, and we're for people who are joining us. Say hi. We haven't figured out exactly how we're going to handle this, but we're just gonna go with the flow. And yeah, George, could you kind of explain maybe like how you transition your music? When we talk about classical music, what did you used to play versus what you play now, and how you make the kind of bridge the differences and all that.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, so I was like a super classically trained concert pianist, and I think like um it was really hard to be at that level,
Mm,
and I was not a prodigy. So I had to work, and I was a really bad student when I was young. Like I played an hour a week for a really long time. And it wasn't really until college I decided to really become a serious musician.
mhm.
And I dropped out of Harvard for a year and I studied piano and conducting. And like I just remember the early days I would just play like scales like this slow. I mean like really boring stuff for the hand. And like it was just like so then like I don't think I practiced 10,000 hours, but I got like, I think I have like a good 6,000 under my belt. And like, so then, and then after, when I started touring just classical, you know, I would play things like, like Beethoven, or Chopin or something. And like, I did that for a bit, but I was always I love collaboration.
Mhm.
And I think I at heart was always a composer. I always wanted to say what I wanted to say. And I found that to be at odds with the classical music industry. Even though you're taught growing up to be an artist, you have to be yourself and
Mhm.
bring something unique to the table, especially in American piano pedagogy. Like, you're supposed to be as faithful to the score, but no
Mhm.
one was alive when these composers were alive. So it's all guess. It's like very educated guesses. But then your individuality gets robbed. And unless you're like super famous, where people don't care what you do because they go to see a concert to see you, until you reach that level of fame, it's it's like the amount of criticism you would get for taking risks was crazy, and in fact, from a mental health standpoint, incredibly negative. And I just became uh I really bummed out by the industry, and
Mhm.
I wasn't having fun anymore. And so that's kind of why I stopped touring. I
Mhm.
went into like design and tech. And how I fell back into music was uh partly from a breakup. So those drive musical inspiration a lot. But also this I think, like, I always loved music, but I've always wanted to improvise and compose.
Mhm.
And it's a really hard skill to develop. And I was always jealous of jazz guys. They can just go like they can just do that like without thinking, or like that you'll hum a tune, like if you're like, oh, the Barney theme song, oh, and I was just like, oh man, I wish I could do that. And during the pandemic, kind of two things happened. I One was the emotionally distraught, and then the whole world, was in lockdown. And so I feel like I was so emotionally and spiritually robbed
Mhm.
from my brain, of like that part of your brain with creativity, which
Mhm.
you draw, like the energy you draw from to be creative, was completely depleted and decimated. I was like, well, I have nothing to do. I didn't have a day job. I was living with my parents, and I was like, well, at this point, what can I do that I really want to do? And I was like, I really want to be able to improvise. And I realized the only way to do that, like to do it like well and quickly, is to have an innate understanding of the instrument, where whatever think of in my head, I can play. The
Mhm.
second thing was, I have to be able to compose in my head and hear everything before I play. And so I would just, to practice, um, I would like sing a tune in my head and then try to see if I can play instantly on the piano. And there was a lot of trial and error there. Or I would like, when I'm dreaming, I would dream about playing the piano. And I started to notice that when I played piano in my dreams, the I don't have perfect pitch, but it matched the keys in real life. Like if I'm in my dream, I'm playing like I it's actually the same note. It's like a
Mhm.
Pixar movie. And so I was like, okay, I think there's a subconscious understanding. And then I would also like mental practice. Like I would take a score and just look at it, and I
Mhm.
would practice pieces in my head, like imagining where the fingers would go and the pedaling. And I think that with a combination of I love playing guitar, and I like took this online guitar class from Brian Sinister, who's one of the guitar players and composers for Avenged Sevenfold, the metal band, and he talked about how to improvise on the guitar, and I kind of took all of that, and then one day I came to the piano, and then I just started playing. And it just like something clicked in my head, and this was
Mhm.
like April of last year, and then I was like, oh crap, I can improvise now. And then all of a sudden I can hear music in my head and just play it. And like when I write music now, I can just sit there and just like listen to it in my head and be like,
Mhm.
okay, I'll write that. And like this has never happened to me my whole life.
And then it
Anyways, I know that
happened.
was, and then
Oh,
it literally just happened. Like I can't explain. Just one day, woke up now, and I was like, I could play anything. Like there's a really difficult exercise in theory of doing a descending fifth sequence. It sounds like this. Rising fifth, falling. That's a very difficult theory exercise in harmony, in Western classical harmony. But I don't know. After that thing clicked, I could just go like sometimes to practice, I just go like. Like I can just do it from will, and I was just like, oh wow, this is insane. So yeah, that's how I transitioned. That was kind of like the transition process of going from just playing, to like doing my own stuff. So yeah.
okay, now you've set the bar really high. I would like future live stream guests to basically welcome themselves or me to the show this way. And it is very soothing. And I started listening to your new album, Peach something. What was it again?
Oh,
Peach Tree.
Under the Peach Tree. Oh, I have the vinyl.
Oh, check it out, guys. What a treat. Whoa.
That's the vinyl. And then I collabed with this amazing artist, Maggie Chung,
Oh,
Taiwanese
wow.
American artist, to do the cover. And that.
Wow.
And then the vinyl itself, like it's kind of cool. Like it has like part of the album cover on it.
Wow. So cool. I
Yeah.
mean, do people buy these days buy the vinyl, or is this like a collector's edition or something?
Yeah, I actually sold out. I should have made more. I only made like 18. I made 20 of them, and then I kept one, and Maggie kept one. And
Oh man.
I didn't think I was gonna sell a lot because, excuse me, this is such a departure from my past music career. Like it was basically rebuilding my fan base because my old fan base was like, we want to hear, like all the old classics, and then
Mm.
like this new, like my new audience, I'm trying to convince them, like stuff like this. And like that's a pretty drastic shift,
Mhm.
and I feel like so it's like rebuilding a whole new fan base, and so I didn't think we were gonna sell out. We sold out. I keep saying we. Well, yeah, technically it was me and Maggie, but we sold out in a day. We sold out all 18 copies, and then I
Of the
realized I
vinyl.
should have of the
Mhm.
vinyl, and I realized I should have made 100. Like, but you know, the process of an entrepreneur, you know, you've
Yeah.
followed the lean startup model, or the IDEO human-centered design process. You ideate, you prototype, you put it out in the world, you learn from it, you keep learning. So I was like, okay, now next time I know, I'll do 100, I'll make 100 vinyl. But yeah.
There's so much to break down here, right? Like, I'm so glad people are going to be watching this now or later, because there's, to me, I mean, the cross disciplines of music and content creation, blogging, podcasting, YouTube, frankly, it's all the same. You know, I don't know why we separate
Yeah.
the disciplines so much, but what first of all, George, there's so much to break down. What you just said about pivoting from one subject, one topic to another. That's scary because you've already built an audience. You've been a working musician for a long time. Classical
Yeah.
music is drastically different. And even within classical music, and there are different disciplines, different styles. And now
Yeah.
you've sort of left your old audience as a concert pianist into this new genre. I mean, how, let me start with one question at a time. I mean, what did you see as the trends? Like, how did you know that? How did you know the metrics that people were leaving and new people were coming? And where did these new people come from?
Uh, yeah, that's a great question. So like in terms of my music, it is honestly what I like playing and how I
Mhm,
think. And so like some people like I've been playing a lot on Clubhouse, um or I've been playing a lot, like I've just been doing a lot of stuff online.
mhm,
And someone asked me like, "Oh, do you play this way because it's more trendy?" And I said, I never thought about it that way. I was like, no, I play
mhm,
it this way because I like playing it. I like playing the piano this way. And so I never, I'm really proud to say as an artist, nothing I did in the transition process was to pander to an audience.
mhm,
It was just me as an artist. Like it was, so I guess from an entrepreneurship standpoint, it was the most entrepreneur thing to do. I did not listen to the market. I did not try to find product market fit. You
mhm,
know, if I
mhm,
was trying to find product market fit, I would be like wearing anti-social club. I would like just have a ton of beats, and like I would not
mhm,
use an acoustic piano. But I wasn't thinking about an audience. So that's the first thing. The second thing, like to more to your question, is I noticed when I put it out there that I was not really playing classical anymore, I
mhm.
lost a lot of like I lost followers on Instagram. That was like the
Okay.
first thing.
Yeah.
Lost followers on Facebook. I lost contacts in the industry. So
Mhm,
like gigs I used to get that were really easy started to disappear.
mhm,
And it was interesting because I look at my like Spotify and Instagram data, and my demographic is strictly 25 to 35, like very like a huge percentage of my audience, which is the audience classical music venues desperately need.
mhm,
And they were turning me down because I
mm,
was not like, they would ask me, are you gonna play a Chopin scherzo, or are you gonna play, like the third ballade or Schubert? And I was like, no,
mhm.
I'm gonna play
No.
excuse me, I'm gonna play a song I wrote.
Mhm.
And I'm gonna do like I love playing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. They're like, oh, okay. Well, if there's an opening, we'll let you know. And so those were kind of the immediate consequences.
Mhm,
Um, but I did notice like with my new fans, and yeah, I'm not famous, so like it's I know it's like compared to a really well-known concert pianist, it's not a lot, but to me, I'm just super grateful for these fans. Like I've never had a fan experience where people have been helping me on their behalf.
mhm,
Like they're just like I've had fans send me gifts like just out of the blue. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Or people I've never met before promote my album,
mhm,
or like someone introduced me to a performance opportunity, or like I've never had this kind of love from the fans. And like if I knew this could exist when I was starting out my career as a concert pianist, I
Mhm.
would have totally gone this direction without a doubt. And then I have one, I guess every entrepreneur or creative has their like regrets on not taking initiative. Like I didn't take initiative on digital
Mhm.
in 2015. I was super lazy about it.
Right.
And now that I look back, had I taken advantage of that, the pivot would have been a lot easier because right now I'm still building the audience from scratch.
Mhm.
And because I put so much of my career on building other businesses and building their social media presence and like building those business goals, like
Mhm.
I now have to do that with myself, which is kind of weird. But also to I know how expensive it is to grow an audience. So it's just like, oh man, if I capitalized the early wave in
Mm.
2015, it'd be easier now. But that's way in the past. So
But
that's
that's
all I
a
can
really interesting point for people who are watching this. I mean, it's so easy for me to want to talk about this right now because yesterday I recorded like a solo episode in between sewed
say.
to answer a question about what was hard for me as a content creator at the beginning. And
Yeah.
one of which are some of the things that you reflected upon. I started the podcast in 2014. At that time, I was looking back to think, I wish I started doing this when I was 20. I mean, when I was in school, why did I wait until I'm like 31 years old or something? Like, this is
Yeah.
ridiculous. And but I'm really glad that at one point we started doing this. And if you're watching this thinking, I don't want to be judged, I don't feel like I have enough to offer to the world to build an audience. Frankly, it's never too early to do this. And so,
Yeah.
George, yeah. So what are your thoughts on learnings in terms of some of the things people don't know, right? Like it's expensive. You mentioned it's expensive to build an audience. What do you mean by that?
So like there's different ways to build it. Organic would be the dream scenario, which is what I'm doing right now.
Hmm.
Everything I've done for music wise has been organic. So it's been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And yeah, I don't have a blue check mark, but like I'm really proud of the following we
Hmm.
have. Like, we have a good group of fans who are really intellectual, who are funny and charismatic and thoughtful and really good listeners. So that's the best fan and artist can ask for, is like people who really care about what you're doing and what other people are doing.
And I'm
But
gonna
that's
just
organic.
clarify. Sorry, George.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna clarify a few things, which is you've started these live concerts on Instagram. That's one way that I've seen you being fairly active and consistent with building an audience. Is that accurate, or were there other channels
Oh,
you're exploring too?
yeah. So like on the organic side, the most expensive thing about organic is time. So like,
Mhm.
yeah, I spent a lot of time doing Instagram live.
Mm.
In fact, my first album, Sonic Sanctum, is I recorded that in one Instagram live session in one take. I remember, and the whole album's improvised. I remember putting it on. I think only 3 people tuned in who I didn't know,
Mm.
and I
Mhm.
just told those 3 people, I'm gonna record a whole album in one take, and you 3 people are gonna keep me accountable to finish it. Because as a classical musician, when we do recordings, if it's not 100% perfect, we freak out.
Mm.
So I had to like break that kind of
Yeah.
horrible world of judgment. But anyways, so yeah, so aside from Instagram Live, a big driver has been Clubhouse. Like
Mm.
Clubhouse has been so amazing for my career, and
Mm.
it's starting to die down a little bit because the popularity is not as strong as it was a few months ago. But
Mhm.
I'm indebted to that app. Like the oh god, if we're using marketing terms, the
No, this is
funnel,
great.
like the lead generation from like with the user funneling from Clubhouse to Instagram was incredibly successful. Like, but I never thought of it as a funnel
Mhm.
until like the results were too obvious to ignore.
Mhm. Tell us more.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so like I before the pandemic, I think I had like 600 Instagram followers,
Okay.
and now I have about 1900.
Okay.
And like, yeah, it doesn't sound like a lot, like compared to like, I don't know, Long Long probably has a couple million, but like
Mhm.
it's,
Yeah.
but that was all organic with no
Mhm.
budget, right? And
Right.
like and I believe I earned every follower. Like every
Mhm.
follower is a human being that I think I've like seen somehow through Instagram or Clubhouse.
Mhm.
And like I would open up a Clubhouse room, I would play piano for like 5 hours straight, and I would be the host, and I would take requests. Like people would request like, oh, I want Studio Ghibli, know Howl's Moving Castle? Or like Star Wars? Or Harry Potter? Or La La Land? And I would like improvise people's stories or moods, and like they'd be
Wait a
like, "Oh,
minute.
quick,
For anybody who's watching
yeah,
right now, if you guys have any song requests, please leave us a comment.
yeah, yeah." And then like people would ask like, "Oh, do something in F minor," so I'd be like, so I would like improvise something in F minor, and
Mhm.
like I would do that for 4 or 5 hours, and then after the session, I would get 40 more Instagram followers, and so that's like, you know, 10 an hour, which is like very very bad. Like if you want to use like, yeah, Instagram terms, it's like it's a very bad CTR or KPI. But like,
Right.
but you know, I know it was bad, but I didn't pay a dime, and so that's why like I worked really hard to get those 1,900 people, and like uh I wasn't thinking about the number, but like
Mhm.
when I started seeing my Instagram grow, like I wasn't paying attention to Clubhouse. My Clubhouse was growing on its own, and
Right.
I was not paying attention to it. And then Instagram was growing, and then one of my friends DM'd me. He's like, "Dude, you just passed 1,000."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Really?" And I was like, I wasn't paying attention. And then after 1,000, I was like, "Oh shoot, this is like a real audience generation platform.
Wow.
I need to take advantage of it." So Clubhouse has been really great to me. And just like uh I did a couple brand collab concerts on the internet, like live stream. That has helped a little bit.
Mhm.
um I partnered with my old business partner at Giant Robot, who's actually more like my sensei. I really look up to him, and he gave me his Instagram to play music for the Giant Robot community every Sunday, and we've been doing that every week since the pandemic, even
Is still
until
doing
now.
it?
Yeah,
Wow.
and so he has a pretty sizable audience, and like I've had like so many crazy people have tuned in to that live session, like, you know, like Tamlin Tomita, the actor,
Mhm.
Kim Jong-gi, the artist, you know, like Joe Han from Linkin Park. Like I've seen them like tune in, and it's surreal. Like, you know, I'm playing music for all these people. It's a really good feeling.
Wow.
So yeah, I think those were all the kind of different ways. I didn't do a paid ad. I've never, for my music, never did a paid media campaign. Um, and I could have. Like, I know how to. There is a way to brute force it through paid media.
Mhm.
Like whether it's Google ads or Facebook ads or Instagram ads, targeted ads, right? You create all these different A/B tests to test audience, demographic, behavior, interest, gender, you know, like location, and
Mhm.
then you do 2 weeks of those tests. You do $100 per bucket, and then you take the highest performing one. Then you change your budget to like 500 a day, and like there's a very methodical way to do it. But I figured, now if everything's truly organic and people follow me because they actually like the stuff,
Mhm.
then like if there is money behind it, it'll just be the greatest gasoline, right? Like then it will just
Mhm.
take off. And so I feel like I don't really have a goal in terms of social media following, but
Mhm.
like a good goal for this year would be like if I can get to 5,000 by the end of the year, and if I could on Spotify, if I can get to 3,000 followers, that would be very more than satisfied. And that's like for organic, that's a pretty difficult goal, but
Hey, I think, I don't know how sophisticated everyone is when it comes to advertising, promotion
mhm.
right now. So I'd love to see, if you're watching this, like, did that make sense? Or can we elaborate a bit more on the definitions? But here's the thing. I think some of the takeaways, as George has learned in the past year, maybe year and a half, is that we are, it's easy for us to want a blueprint to say that we want to go on certain platforms. Okay, that worked for Faye,
Right.
that worked really well for George, but realize we're telling these stories retrospectively. I know that for me, for instance, YouTube has worked out really well. I wish I got on YouTube when I started the podcast in 2014. I did not. I didn't start until late 2019. I'm like, damn, I just missed that boat. Like, I missed the opportunity to start early. But for George, I mean, Clubhouse was great. For my colleague, Mike O'Brien, Clubhouse was great.
Mm.
So I
Yeah.
think, right, we owe that to ourselves to experiment. But secondly, I want to say is one thing I learned from Seth Godin. I learned a lot of things from him, but one thing I realized is you got to be careful when and how often you look at your stats, because
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
they're not helpful. Because for me to look at YouTube, often I can think of, oh, I should really just produce more Zoom and virtual meeting videos. They always get picked up right away. I can see the trend. But the moment I talk about entrepreneurship, how to make money, or even YouTube growth, YouTube's like, no, 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 that's not for you. You should do something else. Like the algorithms can manipulate you as a content creator to do what they want. But
Oh,
I
totally.
think, right, ultimately, like what we summarize here is that you have to know what you want and to be true to yourself. It's much easier said than done, for sure. So and actually, George, I would like to get a little practical here, that going on Clubhouse
Mm.
as a musician is probably not the most trivial thing. So could you talk about your setup for Clubhouse? Because essentially it's the same for live stream. You're coming in really clear right now. Like, how are you able to do that? Where do you place your microphone? What is the microphone you're using at the moment?
Yeah, so I for this Zoom, I have two Neumann U87 AIs pointed at the piano
Hmm.
that I got in the 8th grade because Guitar Center put the wrong price on them. And I
Sweet.
actually saved up all my money to buy a guitar, and I went to Guitar Center, and a Neumann U87 AI is almost $5,000 a piece. So that's $10,000 mic set. It's very expensive. But they put $2,000 for both.
Oh my
They
goodness.
like put the wrong price. And California state law, whatever price you advertise, you must sell. And so I just bought it. And like I walked home
Yeah.
with no guitar, and
Hmm.
I just bought these like really nice mics, and I had no audio interface, but I was
Yeah.
like, I got it. And like I've been using these mics ever since. But anyways, so yeah, I have that, and then I used to have it go through an iRig to my iPad, and it was like super
Hmm.
sophisticated. But there's like this thing in design where it's the difference between a designer and an artist. An artist is striving for some kind of ideal thing,
Hmm.
and a designer is striving for what works for a person.
Mm.
And so I did it. It's so much work to set up for Clubhouse with the iRig. And
Yeah.
I did a fidelity test because this is a handmade Steinway. This piano was the piano they used in La La Land. So this is the piano Ryan Gosling played. And it's on loan from Steinway. So at Steinway and Sons, thank you for letting me borrow this
Wait a
beautiful
minute.
piano.
This is the actual piano or just another model of
If
what
I No, it's the
this is about?
if you like listen to the recording, it sounds exactly the same. It's kind of creepy. So like they recorded on this piano and they also used it and in the movie. And so uh like it's a beautiful piano in person. It's the best Model O, like a grand size is like almost 6 feet. It's the best O I've ever played in my life. But through the iRig and my expensive mics, you can't really tell. And so like I would get feedback. People would think like, "Oh, what electric keyboard are you using? Because it's amazing." And I'm like,
Mhm. Oh,
"Nah,
no.
shit. This is a handmade Steinway built by 180 craftspeople." But
Yeah.
like they just equated it to a Casio. And that sounded like I was like, okay. And that kind of feedback
Mhm.
maybe let me do a test where I just use my iPhone mic
Yeah.
and I had the same audience retention. So at that point, I was just like, screw setting everything up
Yeah.
and spending 20 minutes just figuring out all this mic stuff and doing leveling. I just use my iPhone now because the the storytelling is more important than the fidelity. Like if
Mhm.
you have something to say and it's potent, then who cares about the fidelity? And it makes me think about those horrible recordings that people got in the 50s and 60s of like bebop players, where they would drill a hole in the roof because they couldn't get into the gig, and they would drop the world's crappiest microphone to get a bootleg recording of the live performance, and the recordings were awful. But man, those records are legendary, like of Charlie Parker just going off and crazy, or Miles Davis when he was playing fast stuff, like and I thought it reminded me of that experience where people don't really care about fidelity if you have a really strong voice and it's meant to be heard. So I think like that was like the moment for me where I realized, I don't need a fancy setup. So for Clubhouse, I literally just use my iPhone. I don't hook it up to anything.
So that's a conclusion that a lot of people want to listen to, whether, I don't know, whether you're a meditation teacher or you're a singer, even, you're a musician. And for me as a broadcaster, look, you don't need to fancy up the setup. And in retrospect, I mean, the lights, I didn't have an Elgato light. I did not have a, 4K camera. And you start storytelling,
Right.
especially at the beginning, you're practicing. So with that said, I want to pull in one of the audience questions from Malcolm O'Brien. In regards to your music creation, do you have an aha moment that you pull inspiration from? Or do you say, I'm going to make some music now and have some deep thoughts on what I want to create? What are your thoughts?
That's a good question. I mean, inspiration comes from everywhere. I think I used to be a really big pre-planner. I used to think ahead all the time. Like, I'm going to be like, when I was in the business world, my goal was to become like Mark Zuckerberg. Like that was like my goal. That's stupid. Yeah, I was a kid. And like, but now with, I don't know what it is with this kind of music making, I'm now in the state of I'm open to anything in the present. Like I have no thinking about the future. So I think that allows me to be inspired by many things at any given time. And songs come into my head randomly. Like I was talking to someone on Clubhouse, and all of a sudden I was just like, while they were talking, I was muting my mic and just going like, I was just like, I doodle, like, how you doodle on a pen and paper. I doodle on the piano sometimes. So like, even when I'm talking, I can still play, but this is all subconscious playing. I'm not really thinking about what I'm doing. But then when I was doing that, I stumbled into. And I was like, oh crap, that's a song. Right? From talking to someone. Or like I had a dream, and in the dream I was on the piano. Because you never know when you enter and leave a dream. But like when I entered the dream, I was already at the piano and I was going. Like I was like, oh, that's a song. And or sometimes there's artists that you love, and then you copy them, and then you form your own style. Like I love the way Hiromi Urahara plays Blackbird, and she does it her way, and then I came up with my version. Like instead of going, I would start with. And like I created my own version. So I think there's just endless ways to pull inspiration from. I will say though, the one that's more confined, like a designer, is film composing. Like when I write for film, like I'm working on a documentary right now. It's funny, like I composed most of the score, and like it wasn't right for the movie. The director was like, yeah, it doesn't work, and you have to like go back and redo it, but you get a bunch of feedback. And that kind of film composing reminds me of doing like agency design work. Right, like you have a wireframe, your client gives you feedback, you do an iteration of it, and then your client gives you feedback again, you redo it until you deliver the final version. And film composing, film scoring is very much like design iteration. So that one, you draw inspiration from the film, but the tunes that you come up with the movie, like like this one movie I did for the Salt and Pepper biopic, like like I knew it had to be like hip hoppy,
Mhm.
and hip hop likes to do a lot of like hip hop likes that chord progression a lot. And so like I was just like watching the movie, I was like, oh, what do I write as the main theme? And then I just thought of like, and that was just that was the idea. And I was like, oh, that works. And like it was like it's uplifting enough but dramatic enough for all the elements, and then you can like change it. You can make it like sadder. You can go like, or you can make it uplifting. Like you can go, you know, you can modify it really easily because it's so simple. And you know that came from the movie subject, watching the movie, having inspiration from the genre, and then
Mhm.
also from the practical standpoint as a film composer, like what is that theme or motive that I can easily mold to be the thread for the entire movie? Because like you'll notice movies you watch that have good music, there's a thread, and then
Mhm.
movies you watch where you forget about the music, like the Avengers, like all of Marvel is like, aside from the Avengers theme song, and actually the music composed for the comic book flip in the beginning of the movie, it's not very memorable music,
Right, right.
right? It's not
Very
like Star
distinct.
Wars. Yeah. So, anyways,
So
yeah,
I wanna I mean, you've done a lot. Again, I think I wanna call out that maybe George Coe is not your household name. Maybe you haven't heard of George prior to this, and,
probably.
probably not. But, I think what you're also hearing about is, number 1, his parents probably very happy about paying all the tuition and fees for his early, I don't know, piano lessons. But number 2 is that you've really built a career in ways that you wanted. So, could
Mm.
you speak to us a little bit about the career side of things? How are you able to now getting gigs to compose for movies? I also want to just maybe do a little bit brainstorm. There's so many podcasts out there, live stream. Are you thinking about composing music for these new age creators as well? Like, how do you get these
Yeah.
gigs?
Yeah, that's a great question. Firstly, my parents are not thrilled uh, that I mean, I did piano out of necessity. I hated piano. I hated, like, even in college, early parts of college, I wasn't like, I liked it kind of like, you know, but I wasn't like, I'm gonna be a piano player. But you know, so my parents paid for it for utility, like help you get into college. Slash, my mom's dream was to be a concert pianist. So like, it was kind of like that Asian projection kind of mental health, bad for you thingy. But the
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah, so I think my mom is proud of me,
Mhm.
which, like, you know, when an Asian parent says they're proud of you, it's like, oh wait, are you dying
No, no,
tomorrow? Like, is that why you're telling me? Like, no, it's like you
Mhm.
I've only heard my mom said that to me once my whole life. I've never heard it from my dad. And like, you know, so like I know my dad's not thrilled I'm a musician, but whatever, it's fine. But I think, like, in terms of the career, like how am I getting these opportunities? To be honest, I used to approach career like a type A Ivy League business minded person. Like,
Mhm.
I'd be super aggressive and like I would get the sale, you know?
Mhm.
Because that was the way I was taught from my father, because he's an entrepreneur and he was an immigrant and he was heavily discriminated against. And I was discriminated against in corporate, not like him, but like, because that was the 70s. But,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
I faced a lot of racism, ageism, in corporate and in the tech world. And, you know, so I was very aggressive. But I realized, you know, going through therapy and continuing to go to therapy,
Mm,
that I'm a type B personality. My natural inclination is not to be aggressive and to be
mm,
confrontational and
mm,
unpleasant and disagreeable. And so I don't know. I used to be like really gung ho and aggressive and ask people for things up front. And like, if you read the 48 Laws of Power or Machiavelli's The Prince, you think that's the way to do it. But honestly, with music now, I'm just in a state of I'm friends with everyone I work with, and all these amazing opportunities have been given to me.
mm,
I
mm,
didn't even ask for the film composing stuff. A friend who I took headshots for when I was shooting photography professionally called me one day and was just like, "Hey, I remember you played the piano." I
mhm,
was like, "Yeah, I used to." And they're like, "I got a movie I'm working on. Can I like talk to you about it?" So we just got coffee and hung out. And that friend is Dan Nakamura. He's known as his producer name is Dan the Automator, and he produced like the Gorillas.
mhm,
And like so he's like a big hip hop producer, and I'm just like this rando piano player. And we worked on this movie together during the pandemic, and we had a great time. Like during the pandemic, we quarantined for like 20 days each, and I went to his house in the Bay Area, and we recorded this like the synth piano like synth orchestral album for fun. Like we never
mhm,
released it, but it was like just fun, you know. And I think
mm,
like once I entered the state of like I'm just gonna have fun with my friends,
right.
and I think if I'm a good person and I'm
Mhm,
kind
mhm,
and I surround myself with people who have similar values,
mhm,
and but I still work really hard and I know I'm good at what I do, I think the good things will come. And that this way of building the career has been way more enjoyable than like
yeah.
when I was going for like $20 million evaluations for a startup, right? Like I
Mm.
like people are like, "Oh, like who, who did you, which tree did you climb to get the gig?" And I said, literally none of them. Like it was falling into my hands. I'm just super grateful.
And
So
that's
yeah.
I'm so glad you touch upon that. I mean, I feel like there's something that to be said. I mean, we just passed the month of June, again, Asian
Right.
American, Pacific Islander celebration. But, I'm so thrilled, number one, that we're able to acknowledge and address and openly talk about mental health. Yesterday, I was recording an episode
Mm.
for the other podcast I'm managing right now called Enabled Disabled. And the host and I started an interview to talk about the progress behind the scenes. And I was very open about mental health, and especially for us growing up. I guess I'm sort of like first generation. I
Yeah,
think in a
yeah,
way, like it's so weird. They combine, like if your parents are first generation, you can be considered as first or second generation. But I'm certainly
yeah.
first gen, and there is an enormous amount of pressure that comes
Oh
with
yeah.
it. So I'm really glad, and I'm even happier for the fact that you've chosen a path where you can actually be you and not worry
Yeah.
about the analytics, the likes, the comments, the shares, but doing something you love and attract people who come to you and for your, by the way, as a content creator, it's not just the music you produce, but the way you work with them, the process, and
Yeah, yeah.
right, like it's so interesting. So I know that we're running a little bit out of time. What are some of the things that you really want to share, but I haven't asked or haven't really gotten to?
No, yeah. I would say though, if you're gonna pursue an artistic endeavor, do it wisely.
Mhm,
Like, I'm not making that much money right now. I'm gonna be totally honest. This
mhm,
piano on loan from Steinway, like all the equipment I have has been with me for the last decade of
mhm,
collecting and saving.
mhm,
And I'm living off of my savings right now. I saved aggressively in my mid 20s. And so, I can ride out till next year.
mhm,
And so like I didn't take the plunge just willy-nilly without planning. Like I worked a day job. I was a director at Caltech.
mhm.
Um I guess I want to brag a little bit.
Oh,
I'm the
please.
first Asian American male director in Caltech history. So
What kind of director? I mean, music
I was
or
I was a no, no, I was a very typical, it was a very corporate higher ed job. Director of strategic partnerships out of the Alumni Association.
gotcha.
And Yeah, I quit in four. I was the fastest quitting Caltech employee of all time too. I quit in 4 months. But like, I took day jobs. I did consulting gigs. I saved a lot,
Yeah.
and that's why I can do what I want to do now.
Mhm.
The other thing too is you have to have tools. Like
Mhm.
if you're going to pursue music full time, you have to be good.
Mhm.
Like the reason why I can do film composing is, yeah, I could sit down in one day and write a whole movie. But that's because of, I mean, like I remember at Harvard, the first week of class, our teacher played a recording of a Bach prelude and fugue. Oh, I don't remember. Let's see. I don't remember it. But anyways, he played this recording with this Bach prelude and fugue, and then he's like, notate it. That was the intro to theory class. And it was so intense. And I did not do well academically at Harvard, but I remember studying so hard. And we had to write Mozart sonatas. We had to write like Chopin nocturnes and etudes as
Mhm.
like undergrads without a master's degree. But that training is so invaluable because now I work incredibly fast.
Mm.
And then the years of classical playing, when I play more modern stuff, like I can play A major scale at the concert level without thinking because I did so much practice. Or like I can play like a Chopin etude. Not totally accurately, but like I can still play without like really practicing. But that's not because I'm a prodigy. It's because
Mhm.
I've been working on this stuff for a really long time. So I think that's the
Mhm.
number one advice I have for young people who want to pursue the arts is if you want to do it full time, you have to be good at it. You don't
Mhm.
have to be the best at it because that's impossible, but
Mhm.
you have to be really good at it. You have to be proficient. You
Mhm.
have to have the money saved up. If you don't have the money saved up, there's nothing wrong with taking a day job and side hustling. You're
Yeah.
going to have to make some sacrifices. Like maybe you can't really go on dates all the time, or
Yeah.
you're going to have to
Fancy
explain to your
restaurants.
significant other, like, hey, I know we were planning to like da 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 da, but like maybe we'll like I need to like practice. Like
Yeah.
there's going to be those tough conversations if that's a goal you want to pursue.
Mm.
So be prepared for that. Um, don't have lofty expectations.
Right. Mm.
Really live in the present. Really like focus on what you're working on at the moment. Be kind to everyone because you never know. Like I just got a gig in October from a family friend I've known since I was 6 years old, and she's never offered this gig to me.
Mm.
And so like you never know, and I'm so incredibly grateful to her. And so like you never know where these opportunities are going to come from, so always be kind to people. I mean, I could have like my checklist would just be like practice, like be good at what you do, be kind to people, live in the present, lower your expectations so you don't get disappointed, take care
Right.
of your mental health, because if you're mentally unstable even
Yeah.
a little bit, it will come through your art, it will come through
Mhm.
your work and your relationships with people.
Mhm.
Get paid.
Mm.
Don't be a freelancer in the sense of getting things done for free. Get
Mhm.
paid even if it's $5. Like
Yeah.
design work, I charge like when I do brand consulting, if I'm doing a whole brand identity with like brand values and everything, and you come out with a brand guideline, my
Mhm.
rate is 50K.
Mhm.
That's my personal rate, and I don't change it. And people are like,
Mhm.
"Well, that's too expensive." And I say, "Okay, go to an agency. They're going to
Mhm.
charge you half a million. We're going to do
Mhm.
the same work, but that's why I'm worth 50K just for one person because I will do what the agency does, but it's
Mhm.
just me, and I do it 5 times faster. But like the reason why I can charge that as an individual is because I have all this experience. And so like don't devalue work, get paid. Um uh like and be an entrepreneur, learn everything. Just
Mhm.
because you're an artist doesn't give you permission to not be a booking manager or learn about how to do public speaking or learn about how to build your own website, how to build your own social following, learning about photography. Like You
Mhm.
should be open. Like I will never forget what Yo-Yo Ma said to me. Yo-Yo, we were doing a master class, and Yo-Yo said, like someone asked Yo-Yo, do you think anything's boring? And he said, if you genuinely believe in the creative process and the
Mhm.
joy it brings to humanity, there's no way you can find anything boring.
Mhm. Mhm.
The boringness comes from the lack of good delivery, but the
Mhm.
subject, no subject in the world is boring. And it's like that idea of tapping into that present moment fluidity of exploration. And so like always be in that state as much as you can.
Mhm.
And also it's okay to sometimes not do anything. Like I used
Yeah.
to be so busy and I
Yeah.
had to always be super productive. I planned, like in college, I had my days planned from 5 a.m. to 1 a.m. every day.
Mm.
And I even planned my sleeping time, how much lunch I could have and all that bullshit. And
Mhm.
I realized like, oh, what an idiot. And like even now I don't have that schedule anymore and I'm way more productive
Yeah.
in the long run. So anyways, that's my little ramble on that.
No, I love the finals, like as like a rapid fire summaries of things that you learned. Another, I would say a call to action for people thinking about pivoting their careers. I think what George just
Mm,
mentioned is if you have a specific skill, you come from a, corporation, like for me, that was project management. I was known for that. I knew I could
mhm.
demand a lot more for that. So I would use my skill A to get paid, like
Yeah.
George did with design work. And then I will basically use that budget to feel into my
Yeah.
creative endeavors. That was really, really important. So that is something to know. And then I think the final thing was also you need a buffer. You need space in your life in general.
Yeah.
That also applies to moms, caregivers out there. You need space to think independently, to think comfortably when our lives are just too packed. And some of that it is a little superficial too. You look at your schedules, like, do I really need to be this busy? Do I have to say
Right.
yes to everything? Right? Like I totally agree with you. I feel like I'm operating on a different level as a result of creating space and buffer in my schedule and not thrive or brag about how busy I am all the time.
Yeah.
So
People who
yeah,
brag about how busy they are, like now I look at them like, that is not something to brag about, man. Like that just sounds miserable. Oh, I will
yeah,
say one piece of advice if you're Asian American, because I can
yeah,
say this because I'm Asian
because
American.
we are, yeah,
Uh, I don't know if we're allowed to swear on this show, so I think I did it a couple times. So I
yeah.
apologize.
No worries. Yeah,
Uh, so I would just say, move the fuck out. Like,
yeah,
don't live at home. And I'm not saying that like,
yeah,
okay, like if you were not super, if you came from a non-immigrant family scenario, like maybe you could live at home. The reason why I say that is because for 6,000 years of East Asian history, speaking up and having your own voice never existed. Okay. This idea of taking care of your mental health and well being has never existed in pious culture, feudalist culture. This is the biggest, it's not just a culture shock. It's a it's a complete like
mhm,
generational ideological spiritual shock to your parents. So
yeah,
if you're stuck at home and you went to an Ivy League or you went to a great school, like you went to Purdue or UCLA or whatever, and you go home, you quit your day job as an engineer and now you're going to be a chef, in their heads, you're just you're just a piece of shit. Like they're gonna remind you every day you live at home. And then you're gonna get angry. You're gonna hate your parents. You're gonna think they're the worst humans in the world. It's gonna tear and like you'll end up like every great Asian creative that we look up to, or every minority creative who came from an immigrant family in America at least. No, almost all of them have terrible relationships with their parents. It's
yeah,
because of that. And so,
mhm,
like, my biggest advice is find a way to move the fuck out because the moment you leave the home and there is that physical barrier,
yeah,
and Asian parents are like, well, I haven't seen you in 2 weeks. You don't love me anymore. No, that's not true. I just don't want to see you because you're crazy. And like, but then when you create the distance,
yeah,
it'll do miracles. You have, yeah, like what you're talking about, Faye, like you have your space.
mhm,
They will respect you a lot more because Asian people love money. And
yeah,
if you're not spending your parents' money, that just demands respect. So I would say even like specifically for people in immigrant families in the United States, if you're going to be an artist,
Yeah.
you have to save up even more money to live on your own.
Oh,
Like I
amen.
will say, if I didn't leave my parents' place, like I would not be doing the music I do now because
Mhm,
like they would be like, "Oh, you're not playing classical." Even when I was playing classical, like this is
mm,
how tough it is to be in a household like that. Like even when I was playing classical and I was like selling out concerts around the world, they would
mhm.
still criticize my playing. And like, do they have any basis of telling me how to play Rachmaninoff? No, but they think they do because they put the food on the table. But the moment you take that power away,
Mm,
what are they going to say? And the only thing that's left is unspoken respect. So
yeah.
that's another thing I would add to the list is if you're an immigrant, kid of an immigrant, or you're Asian, yeah, move the fuck out. That's
No, I mean, that's a transparency. I mean, right?
yeah,
Like people don't hear about that. And I'm really glad you brought it
yeah,
up. And it's very different now. I'm in a, I lived away from my parents since I was 17, 16 years old. I mean,
yeah.
literally 8,000 miles away. But now I bought a house and it happened to be a big house where I invite my mom in. She tells me how proud she is of me every single day. I take care of her. She gets to do
Oh,
her
that's
artwork.
amazing.
Thank you. But frankly, this relationship that I'm witnessing with my mom, sorry, I don't know. I can't tell you there's a second relationship like that. And
Right.
right? You have
Yeah.
to choose the right people. The same thing, like you can't choose your family, you choose your friends. But if your family doesn't understand what you're doing, podcasting being one of them, it doesn't matter if you're Asian or not Asian, people tend to ask you during family get togethers, like, how much
Oh,
are you
yeah.
getting paid? How much money are you
Oh,
getting
what's
paid?
that fun thing you were doing again? Like I'll never
Hobby?
forget. I played piano one time for the now president Joe Biden.
Mhm.
And I was sharing with the Asian aunties, like, I gotta play for the vice president. I
Yeah.
played what did I play for Joe? Uncle Joe. I played the third ballade. He likes Chopin, so I played the third ballade. And I'm like, like what an honor, right? And the first thing those aunties asked was, did you get paid?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was like, that's what you got from that? I just played for the second most powerful human being in the entire free world and like one of the most beloved politicians and
Yeah.
a guy who's been fighting for civil rights and all
Mhm.
these like things since he was 30, like the young one of the youngest congress person in American history. And you asked me if I got paid, and it's the
Mhm.
whole value system is
Yeah.
just not like I'll never forget when I even got into Harvard. I thought like that's the Asian
Mhm.
dream, right?
Right.
And then I have my dad tell me like, going to Harvard doesn't mean anything if you can't make money. And I was
Yeah.
just like, whoa. That
Yeah.
Chinese word fool, like that word fool has fucked up like all of Chinese thinking because like fool is not really like truly like fruitfulness like the way America like we have translated fool. Fool
Mhm.
has the word money in it. you
Mhm.
know it's about money. It's not about like values and ethics and like like all these like lofty things that we've like put in like anime or like Avatar the Last Airbender. It's more like it's actually like money.
I mean,
Fool is
it's
money.
true. Not every single family is, not every single family is like that. I've known poor families who, you know, uh, don't even think about money all that much, and trying to support one another. But it's true. I think whenever it comes to money, same thing with analytics, likes and followings, there's a single number you can
Yeah,
look at and measure people and put people in boxes.
yeah,
But, I think another key takeaway, like George said, is you got to find your own friends, got to find like-minded people who that really jive with you, that you can do work with, collaboration.
yeah,
Speaking of which, right, that's why we're here. And I would encourage anybody, it doesn't matter how small your platform is, trying to not just promote, the word is promote, but celebrate other people's work and put them, if you're a YouTuber or a podcaster, you're naturally can invite other people to join you in, and to give people an opportunity to talk about their stories, their backgrounds. So I'm so grateful, George. I know you and I can talk about this forever. and I appreciate the transparency. And hopefully you'll come back and join me again.
No, yeah, it'd be an honor. Hopefully we could do one in person,
Yeah.
that would be fun. And it'd be cool to do one with a piano in person. And
Yeah.
no, thank you, Faye, for always thank you for the opportunity. But more importantly, it's just great to catch up and wish you the best, wish you and your audience the best. And
Thank you.
if you are not already subscribed to any of Faye's channels, please give her a follow on LinkedIn, YouTube, and all her socials. Don't forget to visit her website or just Google Feisworld Media. This show is not, I don't know if there is a sponsor, but if there is a sponsor that would like to sponsor Faye, please give Faye a follow and contact her business email. I think.
Thank you for the outro. I didn't have to do anything. Thank you, George. Okay, I'm gonna take us offline, and see you guys. Check out my calendar, feisworld.com/events. You're gonna find out all the independent artists, content creators, creative entrepreneurs joining me in the upcoming month. And ending stream now. Bye.